Every day, you make hundreds of decisions: what to eat, what to say, who to trust, when to act, when to stay silent, and you believe you made each of those choices consciously, carefully, rationally, but the truth is, you didn't. Most of your decisions were made before you even realized the decision existed. Your mind chooses long before you do, quietly, automatically, silently. This is the psychology of unconscious decision-making, the hidden system running your life without your permission. Training as an NLP practitioner, one of the very first things I learned is that our thoughts aren't reality. It turns out that we respond to our own internal representation of the world, a model we've created in our minds, not what is actually happening. Let that sink in before we unpack it together. As a qualified coach and NLP practitioner who spent many years experiencing social anxiety, avoiding and defending myself against all the people who I believed didn't like me, were criticizing me, or were out to hurt me, I can tell you that this is a shocker to discover. Finding out that for years you've been acting on made-up stories in your mind that are based on a ton of missing information. Therefore, your feelings of self-righteousness and defensiveness, and your preceding actions perhaps weren't justified. Well, that's a punch in the gut, and quite frankly, it's a truth that's hard to swallow when we look back at how we have behaved towards other people in our lives. Isn't it kind of reassuring to think we have all the answers and know what's going on, as if we could have this amazing ability to mind read and make accurate assumptions about other people's intentions without the need to check? We crave that certainty. So much so that it can be easy to ignore evidence to the contrary, including disbelieving the research that this is what we actually do. But lo and behold, along comes researchers, Brené Brown, Will Storr, and more talking about the exact same thing. The stories we make up. When you get the same information from credible sources who started in very different places, it's hard to refute it, isn't it? Neuroscience discovered something shocking. Your brain predicts your decisions seconds before you consciously choose. In other words, the feeling of choosing is often just your mind informing you of a decision it already made. Your conscious mind is the narrator. Your subconscious mind is the author. Brené tells us that in the absence of data, we will always make up stories. We're wired to try to make sense of what's happening by filling in the blanks and coming up with a story. This gives us information on how best to self-protect. When we feel like we have connected the dots and reached that aha moment, our brain rewards us by releasing the feel-good hormone, dopamine. The stories we tell ourselves don't have to be accurate, they just have to feel complete. NLP teaches us about the filtering process from which these stories evolve. We know that we can only pay attention to limited information. Research shows that our senses pick up around 2 million pieces of information every second, yet our conscious minds can only handle approximately 134 of these. So, to keep us sane and able to function, our brains have to create shortcuts to help us figure out that which is relevant and important. Anything else bypasses our awareness and sneaks into our subconscious. We use filtering to quickly sort information and decide what's relevant for us by deleting, distorting and generalizing information. Deleting means we're ignoring information or selectively focusing only on certain parts of our experience. Distorting means we're misinterpreting information we receive. Generalizing means we're grouping things into categories and making conclusions based on things we deem to be similar. As a result, we're constantly coming up with theories and assumptions based on our own previous experiences and beliefs, which set our filters so that we can function. Will explains in The Science of Storytelling that, in seeking explanations for the causes of events and justifying our moral convictions, the facts don't matter to our brains. The first explanation that makes sense of it all will do. So, we all tell stories that are fictional while genuinely believing they are true. We confabulate and rarely question the reality that our brains are conjuring for us. We don't notice it happening. Instead, we feel that the stories we've made up are right, and we see evidence for it everywhere. Why? Because the way our filters work mean that we're looking for evidence that fits with what we already believe to be true. You can't control silent decisions until you can see them. Awareness is the weapon. Here's how you reclaim the choices your mind makes without you. First, notice what you avoid. Your avoidance reveals your unconscious decisions. If you always avoid things like conflict, risk, responsibility, vulnerability, new experiences, people, or change, your subconscious is, well, choosing safety over growth. Second, listen to your first reaction. Your first reaction is pure subconscious programming. If your reaction is fear, doubt, anger, withdrawal, hesitation, it's not really you. It's your history. Third, question the automatic yes or no. Slow down. Ask yourself, is this my choice or my conditioning? A single question can break years of unconscious behavior. Fourth, choose once with awareness. The moment you choose consciously, you interrupt the algorithm, and once you change the decision, you change the pattern. In Dare to Lead, Brené explains that the stories that we make up has the effect of shutting down the uncertainty and vulnerability that are necessary for reaching the truth. Our brains have evolved to be more concerned with quickly marking good guys and bad guys, danger and safety, and less keen on exploring the gray areas and the what-ifs. Consider for a moment the consequences of believing a story that isn't true. I could easily give you a number of examples from my own life of being both the person making up the story, casting myself as a victim, and behaving as if this is true, walking away from friendships perhaps totally unnecessarily. And I could also tell you about the painful experience of being on the receiving end of someone else's confabulations, being portrayed as the villain in their story, and how this escalated into unfounded accusations and unkind judgments and behaviors towards me. They're behaving as if their made-up story were true. In both cases, the storytellers were unwilling to explore what else could be true. Minds made up that thought was fact, and in both cases, those stories saw the end of relationships. But I know that you have those stories too. You know how this plays out. Think about the stories that you've made up and left unchecked, the resulting emotions left festering under the surface, or seeing you responding to another person as if they're one of the bad guys. Think about the damage that confabulations and acting as if your thoughts are true can do to your relationships with family, friends, colleagues, etc., when in reality, what do you really know to be true? So what can you do to bring this storytelling into your awareness and make a change? Here's the secret. Your mind makes countless decisions without you knowing, but that doesn't mean your life is out of your control. It actually means you have more power than you realize, because once you shine awareness on the silent choices your mind makes, you stop living by instinct and start living by intention. Remember, your subconscious writes the script, but you are the one who decides whether to keep reading it or, create a new one. This is mind scripted, where the unconscious becomes visible, and your life finally becomes yours again.